Alycia Parks vs Alexandra Eala. Australian Open swing match fuels buzz around Eala's rise and Parks' power game. Alexandra Eala's Australian Open main draw debut delivered the kind of match that can reshape expectations in a single night. A blistering opening set, a roaring pro-Eala crowd, and a momentum flip that ultimately sent Alycia Parks into the next round. The headline result was Parks advancing in 3 sets after dropping the first set 6-0. While Eala exited singles with a performance that still reinforced why her name keeps trending far beyond tennis circles. Beyond the scoreline, the matchup became a snapshot of modern women's tennis, where a huge serve can reverse a match quickly, and where a young player's visibility can outgrow the confines of a side court. Alexandra Eala's Australian Open debut, a 6-0 statement, then a tough turn. Eala came out with fearless timing and clean returns, racing through the first set 6-0 and feeding off a packed, highly energized atmosphere. The early pattern was clear. Eala was taking time away, getting first strikes on return, and forcing Parks to play from awkward positions. Then the match pivoted. Parks began landing a higher percentage of first serves, shortened points, and protected her service games with a power-first mix of pace and placement. As the rally shifted from neutral exchanges to serve-and-one patterns, the pressure moved onto Eala's own service games, where small dips in first serve consistency can quickly snowball against a player with Parks' weapons. Parks took the next 2 sets 6-3, 6-2 to complete the comeback in advance, while Eala was left with a bittersweet debut. Proof she can dominate stretches at Grand Slam level, and a reminder that closing against elite power requires a steadier plan B when the opponent finds rhythm. Alycia Parks tennis, the big serve blueprint that travels. For Parks, the comeback was a textbook example of how a power profile wins ugly when it needs to. When her timing clicked, she made the court feel smaller, earning quick points, saving energy, and forcing Eala to defend under constant scoreboard pressure. That matters at majors. Early rounds often come down to who can hold serve under noise, nerves, and shifting conditions. Parks showed she could reset after a lopsided set and execute a calmer second and third, even in an environment tilted heavily toward her opponent. Next up, Parks is scheduled to face Karolina Muchova on Wednesday, January 21st, Melbourne time, in the round of 64. It's a contrasting style test, Parks' raw pace and direct patterns versus Muchova's variety, touch, and ability to disrupt rhythm. Eala tennis, what the match revealed about her next level. Eala's first set burst wasn't a fluke. It highlighted 2 traits that translate anywhere: early ball striking and return quality. But the match also underlined the next upgrade that separates dangerous from consistent at the top end. Times serve resilience under pressure, finding more reliable first serve patterns when momentum swings. Times point shortening options, owning a few more free points to stop runs, especially against big servers. Times mid-match adjustments, shifting return position, mixing height spin, and changing tempo before the opponent fully settles. None of this is unusual for a rising player. In fact, it's often the exact learning curve that turns a debut into a springboard. What's next for Alexandra Eala after the Australian Open? While her singles run ended in the first round, Eala's schedule remains active. In the near term, she can continue to build match representatives and confidence through doubles and the next stretch of the tour calendar. A key next milestone is the Philippine Women's Open, where Eala has a wildcard entry for an event beginning January 26th and running through January 31st. The tournament is set to be her first WTA 125 appearance on home soil, and it adds extra meaning. Home events can accelerate a player's growth by combining comfort, attention, and stakes. Timeline to watch. Times January 19th, 2026. Eala vs Parks at the Australian Open. Eala wins first set 6-0. Parks wins 6-3, 6-2. Times January 21st, 2026. Parks scheduled vs Muchova in the round of 64. Times January 26 to 31st, 2026. Philippine Women's Open window for Eala's next potential stop. Why this Parks-Eala match will keep following both players. For Parks, the story is momentum. A comeback when under a hostile atmosphere, then a high-profile matchup that can validate her ceiling. For Eala, the story is trajectory. She showed she can overwhelm opponents on a Grand Slam stage, and now the focus shifts to sustaining that level when the opponent's strengths start dictating play. If you're tracking either player, the simplest takeaway is this: Parks proved her serve can rescue her on the biggest stages, and Eala proved she belongs. Now the next step is turning flashes into full match control. From bagel to battle, Alycia Parks versus Alexandra Eala, a match that defined momentum and meaning at the Australian Open. On a sun-drenched bench of Melbourne Park where the air buzzed with anticipation and Philippine flags fluttered like an impassioned sea, two athletes stepped onto court 6 in a moment that would become one of the defining storylines of the 2026 Australian Open. It was more than a match. It was the collision of narrative arcs. Alexandra Eala, the rising global sensation whose popularity transcends national borders, and Alycia Parks, the American powerhouse whose serve alone could rattle any opponent. What unfolded, a dramatic swing from domination to comeback, captured not only the attention of tennis purists but the wider sporting world. Setting the stage, expectations, energy, and Eala's rise. Alexandra Eala entered Melbourne playing in the main draw of the Australian Open with something rare for a 20-year-old, momentum and a fervent following. Her trajectory through the 2025 season had been meteoric. A strong run to the Miami Open semifinals, competitive Grand Slam appearances, and a growing global fan base that embraced her vibrant charm and fearless play. By the time she arrived in Australia, thousands had queued just to get in to see her warm-up, and so bold the gates opened, seats were filled long before first serve. When Eala walked onto court 6, the atmosphere vibrated with energy. This was no quiet outer-court affair. It was a celebration of potential. Makeshift chants echoed, flags waved rhythmically, and the Filipino diaspora in Melbourne poured their voices into every point. To many, this was not just a tennis match but a cultural moment. A young woman from Manila taking center stage on one of the sport's most iconic stages. And in the opening phases of the match, Eala seemed to affirm all that promise. With crisp returns, impeccable timing, and unrelenting aggression, she steamrolled through the first set 6-0 in just 34 minutes, blanking Parks with a clinical display that left the crowd roaring. 2. The first set, Eala's ascendancy. Watching Eala in those early moments was watching confidence in motion. Every ball seemed to find the sweet spot. Her footwork was energetic but controlled, and her ground strokes, particularly her returns, put Parks on the defensive before she could even get into a rhythm. Eala repeatedly broke serve, sprinted through games with breathtaking point constructions, and seemed to telegraph one message: I belong, hey.